Have you ever picked up your old iPad, opened Safari, tried visiting a website, only for it to refuse to load? Maybe you get a security warning, maybe the page is completely blank, or maybe it loads so slowly that you've already given up before it's even finished. This is one of the biggest problems with unsupported iPads. The hardware is often still perfectly capable, but the software has simply been left behind. Fortunately, Safari isn't your only option. Today, I'm going to show you some of the best browsers I found for unsupported iPads, or in general iOS devices. Explain where each one shines, and hopefully help you decide which browser is right for your device. Now, before we begin, I do want to point out the one important thing. No browser can completely overcome the limitations of older versions of iOS. On iPhones and iPads, browsers still rely heavily on Apple's WebKit engine, especially on older versions of iOS. So if you're expecting Chrome or Firefox to suddenly make a 10-year-old iPad browse exactly like a brand new iPad Pro, unfortunately, that's not how it works. However, some browsers definitely perform better than others, offer more features, or include clever workarounds that make browsing much more enjoyable. So let's start with the browser most people already have, Safari. Safari is still perfectly usable for basic browsing, reading articles, looking up information. It generally works well enough. The biggest issue is compatibility. As websites have evolved, many now expect newer versions of the WebKit and updated security standards, certificates, SSL and TLS services. That means some websites simply refuse to load, and some web pages barely function at all. If you have already installed things like TLS Fix and updated your certificates, Safari becomes much more usable, but it's still not perfect. If you want to know how to do that, I do have a previous video in the playlists for you to go and have a look at the TLS Fix tweak for your iPad. So, what are the alternatives? Dolphin browser is one browser that's been around for years. If you've been using iOS for a long time, there's a good chance you may already have heard of it. What I like about Dolphin is that it feels lightweight and surprisingly responsive on older hardware. You can download it straight off of the App Store without any problems or compatibility issues. It also includes a few handy features that Safari never offered, such as gesture controls, quick access to bookmarks, speed dial pages, and a built-in download manager on supported versions. For everyday browsing, Dolphin is actually a really pleasant experience. It's not going to magically fix every modern website, but if you mainly browse forums, articles, documentation, or lighter websites, it's definitely worth trying and definitely feels quicker than Safari. So then we move on to Puffin browser. Probably the browser people ask me about the most is Puffin. Puffin takes a very different approach. Instead of relying entirely on your iPad's hardware, many web pages are processed through Puffin's cloud servers before being delivered to your device. The result? Some websites that struggle in Safari can actually feel much smoother. Pages often load faster. Complex websites can be easier to use. And older hardware doesn't have to work nearly as hard. Now, there is a downside. Some features depend on Puffin's subscription model, and the overall experience can vary depending on the version available for your particular version of iOS. But if your goal is simply getting the best browsing experience possible on an old iPad, Puffin is definitely one I'd recommend testing. So, which one is best? Which browser do I actually use? Honestly, it depends what I'm doing. If I'm just opening a quick web page or checking something simple, Safari is still perfectly fine, especially after applying the TLS fixes and updated certificates I discussed earlier on. If I want a cleaner browsing experience with a few extra features, Dolphin is usually my next choice. And if I'm trying to load a particular demanding web page that Safari struggles with, Puffin often is the browser I'll try next because of its cloud-based approach. Each one has its strength. Rather than installing one browser and hoping it does everything, I'd actually recommend having all three installed if your device supports them. That way, you've always got another option if one particular website refuses to cooperate. Of course, they're not all magical, and there will still be limitations across all three browsers accessing certain websites with certain modern TLS or certificates. So, before you write off your old iPad completely, There are also a few things you can do to improve browser compatibility. If your device is jailbroken, as I mentioned earlier, I'd highly recommend installing the TLS fix and updating your device's certificates. These don't just improve Safari, they can improve compatibility across your entire device and allow many modern websites to load correctly again. I've covered these fixes in other versions of videos, so as I said before, go and check out that playlist. You can make a much bigger difference than simply switching browsers. So, my final thoughts. At the end of the day, unsupported doesn't necessarily mean unusable. Yes, browsing the modern web on a 10 or 15-year-old iPad comes with compromises, but devices can still be surprisingly useful. Whether you're reading articles, watching videos, or simply giving an old iPad a second life around the house, there's still plenty of these devices can do. If you're interested in keeping older Apple devices alive, don't forget I've got an entire playlist dedicated to unsupported iPads and Apple products. So go check them out. It covers everything from jailbreaking different versions of iOS, fixing YouTube, restoring apps, improving website compatibility, and getting the most out of the hardware that Apple left behind. If there's another browser you've had good luck with, which I haven't mentioned today, let everyone know in the comments below. I'd love to test some more options in a future video. And if you're having trouble with a particular website, tell me which iPad you have and which version of iOS you're running, and I'll do my best to try and point you in the right direction. So if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. If you want to see more legacy iOS content, and if you want to support the channel, go check out the merchandise here. And if you want to support the channel even further from that, then please consider being a member to the channel. It helps out massively. Come and join the family by hitting that join button and get perks along the way, like early access to videos. And I will catch everyone in the next one.